Yes, it is Monday, August 3rd, in the year of the pandemic. Fania, please introduce yourself and tell us a story.
Well, greetings of good health and peace to all. And it's really so nice to see you all here. And I have to say thank you, Eric, for this really tremendous endeavor you took up on yourself and for making us all partners of this journey. As a clinical social worker, I use storytelling and guided imagery to facilitate insights and help people find within themselves that special angle of seeing their circumstances in a way that will empower them to overcome those circumstances and allow them to find a new thriving path in life. I chose this profession because since childhood, I knew I wanted to help people in a lasting way. I wanted to make a true difference. But I can say now, after more than 20 years of experience in the field, that the biggest difference ever made was the lessons I've learned and the change I myself went through as my patients' stories unveiled. I'm Fania Hazan, and I'm going to tell you one of those stories. Jay was about 14 years old when we first met. I was doing my internship then in a large burn center in a prominent hospital in the USA. That morning, my supervisor approached me. Fania, Jay is coming today, and we feel it will be a good thing to have you meet with him. We have tried for quite a long time to lift his spirits and without success. We need to help him, or he may dive into clinical depression, and we cannot allow that to happen. Me? How can they place such responsibility on me, a newbie? I thought. And it was a compliment too, no doubt. I felt proud that they trusted me so. At once I felt both excitement and great anxiety. I had heard of Jay's case in our staff meetings and knew it was not going to be easy. And he was a teenager. Oh boy, do I have what it takes to help him? Later that day, as I sat in the counseling room, in came Jay. Quite tall, not very thin, sort of embarrassed. Come in, Jay, please take a seat. I'm Fania, the new social worker. Jay sat down, looked at me from head to toe. Then fidgeting in his seat, he blurted, "How can you help me?" I'm looking at Jay, hands charred to nubs, and an amputated leg, scars up to his chin. And he's just a teenager, right at the budding of who he is to become in his adult life. I suggested we first take a deep breath, and you can do it with me now too. Just take a deep breath. And then, gently, I asked him to tell me his story. How did it happen? Jay looked surprised. No one asked me that before. Now it was my turn to be surprised. How come, Jay? I asked. I don't know. I guess they didn't look at me straight like you do. And he started telling me. He was alone at home with his brother when the fire started, spreading within minutes wildly to the entire apartment. He managed to grab his little brother and throw him out the window and save him. But the fire engulfed the windows before he himself managed to jump. He rushed to the phone to call 911, and it took him a while to realize that he can't pick up the handset because his fingers were literally melting away. Taking another deep breath together, he continued the story, and then looking at his huge black eyes into mine, he asked, "Who is going to want me? Who is going to love me ever like this?" Jay and I met for about 3 or 4 times. I tried my hardest to empower him, to show him how life can still be beautiful. How there are people out there who can see past what he called his disadvantages, and that I believe he can still have a good, fulfilling life. But he didn't believe that. So he got up and said, "I'm sorry, no one can help me. There is no point," and took steps towards the door. I was aghast. I felt I needed to say something to stop him from leaving. He had no intention of coming back, that was clear. Without thinking much, as he already stood at the door, I said firmly, "You know, Jay, we all have disadvantages, scars, flaws. Most of the time, when we meet new people, we don't immediately see theirs. They don't see ours. They can't be seen at a glance. You have an advantage. When people meet you, they see your scars immediately. You can't lie about them or hide them. So it forces you to be honest, and also forces people to be just as truthful to you. And you have the advantage of immediately knowing if they can see past your scars and if they are worth your attention and heart." Jay looked at me, saying nothing. He took a deep breath and left the room, looking very sad. I felt devastated. I failed. I was worried about Jay. I doubted my choice of profession. Why did I choose a helping profession that has no tools but words? Empty words, it seemed. Years passed by. I married and I moved to Israel. I worked in various settings as a social worker and had many success stories to share. But Jay's story has never left me. I often wondered how he was. Did he manage to find his path in life? I was also afraid to ask about him, lest I found out bad news. Not being able to help this young teenager weighed on me for years. One evening, as my husband came back from work, he said, "Look what I found. There's an interesting article in the New York Times about the burn unit you worked at," and tossed a few pages at me. I immediately started reading, feeling excited to read about the place I truly love, noticing names and photos of past patients. The excitement turned quickly to anxiety, the same mixed feeling I had when Jay was first assigned to me. Is he in this article too? And there he was, about 10 years older, looking splendid in the photo. No longer a young teen, but a confident, grown man. I was elated. I rushed through the article looking for more about him, and nothing prepared me for what I read. There, at the very last paragraph, I read and reread, tears rolling down my cheeks, Jay's words, quote, "He said that while he would not wish injuries on anyone, the burns were in some ways a blessing. They forced him to be honest. It doesn't allow you to lie to yourself the way other people are capable of doing," he said. "There's no way to hide it, no way to spin it around or put it off on someone else. Everybody has issues and flaws, and mine happen to be prevalent right from the door." My words were not empty then. They served as wings for Jay to continue his journey and strive. But this is not a story about how I succeeded despite all. This is a story about our responsibility as storytellers. And aren't we all humans storytellers? Let's always be humble and know that our words can have unimaginable ripples, and we must treat our words thus with reverence and love. Thank you so much for sharing me this with you.
Very
Wonderful.
nice story, Fania, and I really appreciate the work that you have done and you are doing. Very nice story. Congratulations, and I really appreciate. Very nice.
Thank you, Lena. Thank you.
Wow. That's all I can say. Wow. You never know. You just never know. That's such a good reminder, Fania, of how words matter and how we matter. And we can never know how much we matter. That's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful.
That is really the point, Rina, because we most of the time do not have the privilege, like in this story, to find
Absolutely.
out the impact of our words. I was
That's
very,
right.
very lucky to found that, to have found it out, and that it was a good ending.
Yes,
But we really never know.
that's right.
Absolutely
Wow.
incredible, Fania. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you, Rona.
You know, it's just a shame it took you so long to find out, but what a
Yes.
treat you did. Fabulous.
Indeed.
Very
Indeed, but
moving.
as I said, most of us, we tell stories, we say things to people trying to maybe make them feel better, and
Yeah.
we really don't know in the end what impact it had. So we really need to be very careful how we use our words.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's
thank you
fabulous.
so much.
Whatever profession you take up, you do it with full confidence and full zeal, and I never feel diffident about what you're doing. That's what you did. Whatever counseling work you took up, you did it with such zeal and patience and all values, good values, that you really succeeded. In
Thank you,
Jay's
Indira.
case especially.
Thank you.
Your story reminded me of, there's one or two things I regret having done, things that I said to people or something in my 63 years. And a couple of them still haunt me. And it's so sad that I can't undo it. But finally, sometimes you just have to put it out of your mind and hope to do better in the future.
Mm. Mm.
Jay, you have an interesting technique of being able to blur your camera, which is it's a good and interesting technique, but you put a piece of paper on front of it. But I would ask if instead of blurring it, just turn off your camera at times if you don't want the camera to be on. Just stop.
That's so funny. I saw the blurred J and I was wondering, maybe that's Jay.
Yeah.
I wonder
So
if
Jay,
that's Jay listening.
you know how to
Fanya's
stop,
Jay.
you know how to stop your video, right, Jay? On the lower left, there's a button with there's a video camera. If you just click on that video camera, your image will it'll stop the video because we're recording this and it'll look better if there's no blur there. All right.
Can I ask something, Eric, to Fania?
Yes.
Yes.
Fania, it was very interesting that the words that you read that Jay wrote
Yes.
were exactly the words that you spoke to him.
That's exactly what stunned me.
And I'm wondering, I mean, Eric talked about role play. If we were to ask Jay now, I wonder whether Jay would remember that the words came from you or whether they've become his own story.
I doubt that he remembered that I was the one. I mean, I cannot know. I haven't met him. The article was in the New York Times in 2006. And he was then 23 already. And I often thought about it. It's a very good question.
Okay.
I do not know. I would say that I hope that he embedded those words inside of him.
What was his name again?
Jay.
His name was Jay?
That's not his real name. Jay is the first letter of his name.
Okay, David, would you play Jay for a second?
You would like me to play Jay?
Yes,
that's okay, I can do that.
Jay, thank you for joining us this evening. Do you remember that the words that you spoke in that article were spoken to you by a social worker about 10 years ago?
Now that you say that to me, it makes me think, where did those words come from? I thought they were my own words. But now you say that to me, you're triggering a memory.
And
there was a moment sometime after my injury where I really lost everything, and there was a turning point. There was a woman I met, a counsellor. I didn't really understand what that was at that age, but there was a turning point, and maybe that's where they came from. I don't know, but it's true. It's true. People are truthful with me, and I'm truthful with them.
yes, I think after your injury, for some time you were very despondent, but with the help of that social worker, you bounced back.
I'd love the opportunity to say thank you to her.
Oh, yay.
Thank you so much, David. I have to say that reading those words in that article were a huge thank you for me in terms of its meaning to me. It was, because it really doesn't matter if he remembers who told him those words. What matters to me is that, you know, I said 2-3 sentences that turned out to be the ones that made the difference for him. So in that sense, I did help him. And that's the biggest thank you I can get from any patient. Just knowing that something that I said gave them, you know, the strength to go on. So like, I don't know if I would want to meet him nowadays, but just reading this in the article did it for me. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, on an imaginary, on a playful level, you just did meet him. So, and he thanked you. So, so there it is. Okay. Anyone else want to say anything, or shall we go on to the next story? In general, 4 questions that I recommend for discussion after a story is asking everyone, what's one thing that you really enjoyed about the story? Do you have any suggestions for improvement, or would you like to add anything to it? Does it remind you of anything else, either an experience you've had or a story you've heard? And finally, do you get some sort of takeaway, some sort of message from the story?
It reminded me of something similar that happened to me quite a few years ago as well. Strangely enough, Fania, my lad was also called Jay, but it was short for Jason. And he didn't have a disability, but he was so angry that the anger itself was a disability. And I won't share the story with you now, but I'll share it with you another time. And it's quite incredible as well. We do have so much power, but we have such a responsibility as well. And I think that whether or not they remember where it came from, as long as it hits the spot, I think that's important. And I'm sure he did remember. I'm absolutely certain he did. You were the first person that connected with him. I'm sure he remembered.
Thank you.
Well, he internalized it anyway.
Yes.
And the statement, "You're the first person who's looked straight at me," I thought was very powerful. Everyone else is sort of, like, everyone is sliding around him, but you looked at him,
Right.
seen him, and responded to him.
That's right. Usually people, you know, he was really burnt. They're really charred. And I mean, all our patients in the burn unit were like that. But they always spoke about how people turn away, and people, even speaking with them, wouldn't look them straight in the eyes. So that was indeed very powerful.
He got the burns in part by trying to help his brother?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's a real badge of honor.
But he didn't see it that way then. He was very worried about how he looked physically. You know, 14 years old, he was just a budding man looking for, you know, girls and love and stuff like that. And he was very concerned, like, if he would ever find someone. I did read afterwards that he got married. He's a father of children, and he went on to build a beautiful life. But at the time, you know, he was 14 years old.
Fania.
Yes, Effie.
Okay, I would like just to comment something about the way that you told the story.
Yes.
You managed to look at the camera all the time. Good for
It was
you.
hard.
Nice work. It was very hard, but you actually managed it. So it gave us a very intimate feeling with you. Okay, and it's a very important thing that we should really learn. It just brings. Okay, I'm from Israel, another place, and it felt like you're sitting right in front of me, and it was very intimate. The fact that you managed to look to the camera. And as you noticed, she moved a little bit forward and backwards from the camera, and it gave us a certain sense of a certain relationship, and it built up the whole atmosphere around us. And then when you reach down to take the papers, so you have to pay attention when you do that. It covered the camera a little bit, you know, when you do something like that. And you know what, if it was the New York Times, you could even take a cover of the New York Times. It doesn't even matter what it says inside or whatever. But I like the fact that you didn't say, I read. You said, one moment, here, look, I read. And that was also very nice. And also use a high language. Okay, some people bring the language down to earth when they talk. And you, Fania writes also songs, and she's a very poetic person. So words, it's not just by coincidence that you chose a story about words, because words and choosing the right words are her specialty in life. And to hear that this profound specialty was into this one story that was so powerful. It's a beautiful connection as someone who knows you. So thank you very much for the story.
Thank you, Steffi. I think you made a very good point. And when discussing with Eric before, we did mention the thing with the camera and where do you look so that people actually feel as though you're looking at them and not, you know, at something else, because it's really hard. And also, like, for example, I put my hand on and it looks like a huge hand, and things that usually when we tell a story, you know, in front of people, it's not in our mind at all. We're concerned about how to move on stage, how to, you know, bring life to the physical area around us. And all of a sudden now we have this Zoom thing and we have to adapt to it, even in how we tell stories. So, and you know, you can stand up and move, but then the mic won't catch every word you say. So there's a lot of things you have to adapt, basically to adapt.
I agree.
Which is a great skill in life in any case.
I agree. Moving towards the camera and away from the camera is a very powerful part of stagecraft with video conferencing, and could even try moving sort of out of the frame and coming back into it. Now, what were you looking at as you were telling Fania? Were you looking at a large image of one of us, or were you looking at the
No, I was trying to simply look straight, not at the camera, but a little below it.
But what was below? Was there many pictures of many of us, or one picture of one big person?
No, I had the gallery on because one of the things I really like is seeing people's reactions.
Yes. Well, I think that it's a good idea to occasionally look at the people in the top row to get a sense of their facial reactions, even though during that time you are not giving the full eye contact to your viewers.
Right.
But I don't think you have to lock into eye contact with your viewers for the whole.
No, I didn't lock, but it was like I had the gallery on and I was kind of looking in a very general glance.
So you can create a rhythm between looking in the camera and giving your viewers the pleasure of eye contact, but then occasionally looking away, but then coming back.
Right.
Okay, let's move to our next storyteller, if we could. Thank you, Fania, very much.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure.
Indira, are you ready? Here, I'm going to put everyone on mute, and Just Indira, will you unmute yourself? And please introduce yourself. Indira has been my advisor for many years relating to all matters storytelling. We don't meet very often, but we're both in Chennai, and she often gives me very good advice. Yeah, go ahead, Indira. Please introduce yourself and the story and tell the story.
Okay, can you all hear me? Yes? Okay. A big thanks to all of you for being here. I wouldn't say coming here, just being here to listen to me. And a bigger thanks to Eric for allotting me this slot to tell my story. I'm Indira Krishnan. I tell stories to children generally. So telling stories to children, I use a lot of gestures and facial expressions and interactions and all that. But storytelling for adults is a different ball game, I find. I hope I do justice to it. Moreover, telling it one-to-one, as Fania said, it's more interesting and you're able to move around and your mental makeup is a little different. But on Zoom, as Eric said, we have to learn the stagecraft of it. But anyway, we are all new to this Zoom conference, so it's okay.
Indira, I suggest at least try for a minute to hold your microphone up, because I think it's rubbing against your clothing a little bit and it's giving a little sound. So that place on your mic, is that the microphone that's sort of down, partly down on the cable?
Okay, is that better?
I think so.
Okay, I'll talk a little slower. All right.
No, it's not that. There was some interference, but now it's better. Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, go ahead.
This story, which I'm going to tell you, is called The Bishop's Candlesticks. It has had a very deep impact on me. I read it several decades ago, and I never tire talking about it. And because at that age, at that younger age, it really impacted me. So I hope I'm able to express it in such a way that you are also taken in by it. This story starts, let's say, in a little town, a little away from Paris. It's a small town, and the time of the day is night, late night, dark, very cold, and we enter a humble home. Yes, we all enter because the door is partially, the front door is partially open. So when we go in, we find an elderly lady, let's call her Percy, with her young maid, Mary, laying the dinner table. Percy is a little concerned. She says, Mary, do you know where my dear brother has gone at this late hour? To my home, ma'am, says Mary. To your home? Why? Because my mom is not well, ma'am. And you told him so? Yes, ma'am, he asked me. And you told him, and you made him go out in this weather? My dear elder brother, he's getting aged, and he can't be going out in the dark, in the cold. Just then, her brother, the bishop, he enters home, and he looks straight at Mary first. Mary, it's getting late for you. You'd better be going home. Your mother is better. She's sleeping. Go in very quietly. Don't disturb her. She'll be well. She'll be fine in the morning. And here, take my comforter. It'll help you. It'll keep you warm in the cold. And Mary leaves. Now Percy looks at her brother and said, Why do you have to give her the comforter? She's young, she can bear the cold. But the bishop does not answer. Both of them sit down quietly, have their dinner, and Percy retires to her room. Bishop pulls up his chair to the hearth. The hearth is still warm, and he begins to read the Bible. Now enters an uninvited guest. The front door is still open, and this man, he walks in. He looks quite, what to say, he looks uncouth, I would say, very awkward, and he has a knife in his hand. And he comes straight to the bishop. He says, any sound I hear from your throat, this knife will slit your throat. The bishop is not perturbed. He turns round to him. He says, welcome, my guest. You don't have to show me that knife. I'm not going to shout. Come on, sit down. I'm famished. I need food first. Okay, sit down. I'll get you something to eat. He opens the fridge, takes out some bread and cheese, milk, fruits, whatever there is in the fridge, and he serves this guest lovingly. Now, this talk between these two disturbs Percy. She peeps in from her. He opens her room door slightly, peeps out, immediately shuts the door. She looks aghast. She goes and slumps on her cot. And she says, what a guest. What a guest my brother is entertaining. He looks a regular rogue. But my brother sees the Lord in everyone. God bless my dear brother. His soul is pure. And she goes into a fitful slumber. Now outside, the guest has had his food. He wipes his mouth with his hand. And then he says, now, you better give me your wallet, and then I leave. Bishop says, no, you have not told me who you are, or what made you come here, whatever made you come here to my home. Sit down and talk. Aha, I know. You'll get all this info from me and go and immediately inform the police. I've had enough of people like you. No, I just want your wallet and I'm leaving. But the bishop is silent. He's just looking at his guest. And the kindness on the countenance of the bishop makes this guest mellow down. He sits down and he says, all right, you know, I don't have a name. I'm just convict number 15777. Go on. Yes, I lived with my wife downtown, a simple life. I had a job. My wife was a good homemaker and we had a peaceful life. One day, she suddenly got ill. She became very ill. At the same time, I lost my job. I was desperate. I could not pay the doctor. I could not get her medicines. She was getting weaker and weaker day by day. And in my desperation, I went stealing. I went thieving. And one day I was caught. There was a trial and I was sentenced to imprisonment. And the day I was thrown in the dungeon, I heard that my wife passed away. 10 years in the dungeon, ill-treated and ill-fed. Then one day, I found a way to escape. I escaped from the prison. But from then on, I have been dodging the police. No food, no shelter till now. And now here I am with you. The bishop said, okay, you've had food and you'll have shelter. Don't worry, there is a couch here. You can lie down, and by morning you'll be well rested, and then we'll see what we can do for you. Yes, you'll leave me here, you'll go in and call the police. The bishop assures the convict, no, I won't do any such thing. You may sleep here peacefully for the night. It's already getting very late, and I'm sleepy too. And the bishop goes to his room, and this convict, he lies down on the couch. But for how long? Hardly 2 minutes. He was restless. He got up. He looked round the room, and his eyes fell on the two stately, majestic silver candlesticks on the mantelpiece. Now, he's been a convict, he's been thieving, so immediately he jumps up, grabs the two silver candlesticks, stuffs them in his pocket, opens the front door and leaves, shutting the door behind him. The noise of the creaking door shutting wakes up Percy. She comes out of her room. At once she sees the vacant mantelpiece. The candlesticks, the silver candlesticks are gone. This robber guest of my brother, he is left with the candlesticks. Immediately she wakes up her brother, and the bishop comes out, and you can see the emotion on his face. My candlesticks, the candlesticks that I loved, they were given to me by my mother when she was on her deathbed, and now they are gone. His eyes were glistening with tears. But then he said, perhaps the convict's need was more than mine. Perhaps I was too attached to them. So they are gone. One moment's silence, and then the front door, there's a knock on the front door. Percy goes and opens the door, and there stands the convict. On either side, two policemen, and the policemen bring the convict inside, and they address the bishop. Sir, we found this man prowling around in the dark, and when we shook him up, these two candlesticks fell out of his pocket. And immediately we recognized them as yours, because the bishop usually leaves his door open. His front door closes only at night. It's free for guests to walk in. So the police, when they've been patrolling down the street, they have seen the candlesticks. So they recognize them as the bishop. They give the candlesticks back to the bishop and tell him, you recognize this man? He has been thieving. He has stolen your candlesticks. Tell us that he is the thief, and we take him to prison. One moment's pregnant silence. Then the bishop talks. He says, this man is no thief. He was my guest last night. He ate dinner here. He slept here. And I gave him the candlesticks as a gift to him when he wanted to leave. So you can leave him here and you can go your way, gentlemen, he told the police. The police is stunned. Are you sure, sir, about what you're saying? Yes, absolutely sure. I gave him the candlesticks, so you cannot call him a thief. Please go. So the police had to leave the convict with the bishop and leave. After they left, the convict holds the bishop's hands. Tears streaming down his eyes. And he says, my God, if there is a God, I didn't know that he had come alive on earth. Sir, you have made a man out of convict number 15777. I'm glad I didn't take your candlesticks and go away. Please take them back and leave me. I won't be a thief anymore, but I will find my way. The bishop said, didn't you hear me saying that the candlesticks are a gift to you? And I don't go back on my word. Take the candlesticks and go. They will help you to start a new life. The thief was overwhelmed. He could not say anything more. And the bishop gives him the candlesticks. He takes them, and the bishop takes them out and shows him a shortcut to Paris. And he says, go to Paris, mingle in the crowd there so that the police won't get you, and start a new life. This money, you sell the candlesticks, the money will help you to start a new life. I'm sure you will be a good man and not think of thieving anymore. Yes, sure, I'll do that. I'll be a man. I'll lead a good life. Yes. And remember, your body is the temple of God. This will help you not to stray from your path of righteousness. Go, my friend, go. And the convict, ex-convict, he leaves. That is the end of the story, The Bishop's Candlesticks. But this is a story that has been extracted from a novel by Victor Hugo. It's called Les Miserables. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And later on, we hear in the novel that this man goes and starts a new life. Step by step, he climbs the ladder of richness through hard work, honesty, and he becomes one of the greatest philanthropists of his time. In the novel, his name is Jean Valjean. He helps, it's not been a bed of roses. He had to really work his way hard to lead an honest life and earn an honest living, and that really bore fruit. And he never forgot the bishop, and he kept giving others, helping others, and devoted his entire life to the service of humanity. And all the riches that he collected, he kept giving away, giving away. The more he gave, the more he got, and the more he gave. And that is how his life was spent, all because of that one little turn that the bishop did for him in his life.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the applause.
So,
anyone of you, have you read the novel by Victor Hugo?
I haven't read it.
No. This is a
Yeah,
story
I have read it.
Oh.
It was a Broadway musical also, but I
yeah, there was a movie also made.
Mm-hmm. And this Bishop's Candlesticks I read when I was in school. It was a story in our supplementary reader. And later on, I read it as a play by Norman MacKennell. In 1908, he wrote that as a play. That play really reads very well, beautifully written play.
So when you
heard others talking about this story, and somehow I can never forget it.
That's right. It made such a big impression on you.
Yeah.
Well, both stories that we've heard so far involve somebody helping someone.
Yes, yes.
In very different ways. but somebody helping someone by helping activate the person somehow.
And in our scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita, if you have any one of you know about it, there Lord Krishna tells his disciple Arjuna that if you see me and everybody, and I see all of you in me, then nothing will really trouble you in your life. You see, the Lord, that's what the words that Bishop said. Think your body as the temple of God. And Percy says earlier, oh, my brother, he sees the Lord in everyone. So that reminds me of our scriptures, Bhagavad Gita. And later on, in the same Gita, in the 15th chapter, in the 16th chapter, again, Lord Krishna says, even the worst of villains, if he turns to me, if he recognizes me as the Supreme, then I will go all the way to reform him. He will never again falter. So that also comes out in this story. Where is Victor Hugo's story? Where is our Bhagavad Gita? But so much of, similarity in the two, because it is the universal truth about the Supreme. So it comes out in any religion, any part of the world, in any story. All these little things impacted me a lot.
Amazing.
Anything else?
Anybody else? Any comments, questions? Remember my 4 questions? What did you especially like? Do you have any additions or suggestions for improvement? Does it remind you of something else? Or what about what lesson or takeaway do you get from the story? Also when you're coaching a storyteller, 3 questions that are often useful for that is, you can ask the storyteller, are you satisfied with the way you told the story? When you were preparing to tell the story, what were you especially working on? And do you feel that you achieved what you were trying to achieve in the telling of it? So how do you feel about that, Indira? Are you satisfied with the way you told it?
No, I'm never satisfied, because every time I feel, oh, I can tell it a little better. So every time, the next time I tell a story, I try to say it a little better. I sort of judge myself.
How could you have told that better?
I'm never ever satisfied with my story.
But really, is there any way you could have told it better in your perception?
Yes, there will be 100 ways I could have said it better. Sure, but specifically, I can't tell you anything now. But when I think back later on, I would feel, yes, I could have said this instead of that. That would have been more, would have impacted more, kind of. So I do keep thinking of the story I have told, especially when I'm talking to children. The same story, I have repeated it so often to so many groups of children. And every time I say the same story, it sounds a little different even to me. And I always feel it's been an improvement every time. Because I keep thinking of it, oh, I can say a little more here, I can cut down a little here, so that way it will be better for, that way, I keep thinking. So that way I hope I keep improving every time.
Anyway, that's a coaching question, because as a coach, you don't want to impose your vision on your coachee. You want to help your coachee fulfill herself, fulfill her own vision. So you want to ask, what were you working on? Are you satisfied? How would you do it differently next time? Those kind of questions. And of course, the most essential question that you can ask someone you're working with is, what is it actually in the story that you really connected with? What was the essential thing? And I guess in this story, well, I can say the thing that I connected with is the kindness of the bishop.
Bishop.
that he was not vindictive, that he was looking at the long-range picture of the development of this person, and the bishop wanted to be a positive factor in the long-range development. He saw that this person had some potential, even though this person was still acting in a thief-like manner. Somehow he saw that the person had potential for something else. So he wanted to nurture that instead of punish the thief aspect.
Mm-hmm. And he was ready to give up his most prized possession, the silver candlesticks, which he really prized. Just to, reform a person, he was prepared to give up his candlesticks.
It's somehow appropriate that he's willing to give up his most prized possession to help this person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just like this person is a precious person, like every person is precious, the bishop was willing to give up something very precious of his own to help the other person develop in a precious way.
And it struck the correct note in the convict, isn't it?
Yeah, you got it.
Reform. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Okay, let's carry on. Shaila, are you here? Oh, Pandya Rajan, what did you want to say?
Yeah. Indira, congratulations. It is very nicely told, and I think you enjoyed it in your lifetime, this story. I could see that. It is not that you are telling the story. It is you are telling the story, and it's an experience. I could see that because
experiencing the story. You're right, quite right.
Yeah, that is really, I could see that the way, because you did not tell the story. You just it's just coming out of me.
And I think, Indira, you must have a background in theater, isn't it? Have you worked in theater, Indira? Have you acted on the stage?
Sorry, what did you ask?
Have you acted on the stage? Have you worked in theater?
I don't follow what you're saying.
Okay, it's okay. I'll
no, where are you actress? That is what she was asking. Stage actress or something.
Okay.
Have you acted in theater any time?
Me? Oh, I see. Not in the recent past. Sometime in school, when I was in school, yes.
Cool,
but
that's
not
ago.
But not later. But somehow when I started storytelling, especially when I started telling it to children, I had to use a lot of facial expressions, and they really started liking it. So maybe, that way I improved my...
Very good. Okay.
No, Indira, I have the other question.
We still have time.
The bishop was telling a lie to the police that
yes.
He gifted the candles to the thief. How did you tell this to the children when you were telling this story?
No. This story I have not told to children. No.
Yeah.
Not yet. Maybe I'll try to. I don't know. Right. Yes, you've given me an idea now. I will try to tell it to children, but as you say, this telling a lie to the police, how I have to
the bishop
present it to children, I must see. I must think about it.
You are giving a picture of the bishop in a nice way.
Yes,
he could have, it's a blatant lie, and he could have avoided it.
Steffi, what do you want to add?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say it wouldn't be a lie because he actually gave it to him as a present from his heart at the end. So it's not a lie. Not really a lie.
It's a lie.
Yeah, we must try to justify it in some way.
Okay, but I wanted to ask you something else. Of course, I really enjoyed, and there's something in your life experience that when you tell a story passes on, and it's so delightful to hear someone respectful. It's not that I mean, Fania's young and gray, but there's something in the way that you sit and you talk, and I say to myself, oh wow, she knows some stuff, and I'd love to hear things from her. I love the way that you took the story out of Les Miserables, which is a very known story and play and movie, and you took one story out of there and you isolated it and made it into a story. I have a question. Have you thought, I don't know if you told this story sometimes and you connected it to the story and gave us a background, but when we talk of a story and we talk about a peek of the story and where the story ends, have you thought ending the story a little bit before the place that you ended it? Remember, the policeman caught the guy and he wanted to send him to prison and he said, no, keep him here because, and then the man said, oh, thank you very much. And the man said, and the bishop said, take these candles and just go on and go on with your life. Have you ever considered stopping the story there without the man saying thank you again, then the bishop saying thank you again, just stopping it there? And because that's where I felt, oh, and personally I felt that you were just, I don't know, have you ever considered doing that and stopping the story there?
You've really given me an idea. Maybe that would be really dramatic if presented in the right way.
Yeah.
So you could do it. I would tell the story.
You could
would
do
you?
it. You could do it.
I'll try too. You've given a very good idea. Thank you. That
Yeah,
would really end the story.
Because I felt that the things that you added is already an explanation and everything. And if we talk about storytelling, I felt, because you, okay, I got my point through. Thank you
Very
very
good.
much.
Okay, let's move on. Now, let's see, I'm going to mute everybody temporarily, mute all. Now, Shaila, are you here? Are you one of the people with your camera turned off? Perhaps she's not here, but if she joins us later, she can take her turn. Now, David, you must have your camera turned off because there you are. And Sikha, there you are. Okay, so David and Sikha, please turn on your mics. And David and Sikha are going to do a tandem storytelling. So I suggest we try an experiment where let's all turn our cameras off, except for David and Sikha, and go down into where I suggested and set your settings to hide non-video participants. Then you will only see David and Sikha on the screen. So again, 2 steps. 1, turn off your camera. Number 2, next to that camera image on the lower left, there's that upward arrow. Click on that, click on video settings, and it says my video, it says meetings. The 4th one down on meetings is hide non-video participants. If you click hide non-video participants, then you will only see the people whose cameras are turned on. And then the upper left corner of settings is that red button. As you click that red button, I'm going to turn off my camera, stop video. Pandya Rajan, Indira, if you want to turn off your camera, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. And Mr. Nageshwara Rao, if you'd like to turn off your camera, it'll be, yeah, there, well, okay. So, so there we go. Sikha and David, will you, now I'm gonna put, again, everybody on mute. Mute all. But Sikha and David, please turn on your mics. Go ahead, and Sikha, turn on your mic. And okay, so please, David and Sikha, introduce yourselves and tell about how you've been working together, collaborating. And I guess, David, are you in the UK, and Sikha, you're in Nepal? please explain how you've been collaborating, and then introduce your story, and please tell it. And I must say, I'm very happy. Wonderful. Now we just have the two of you. I'm very happy that you're demonstrating tandem storytelling for us today. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody.
Yes.
I'm David Heathfield. I'm in Exeter in the UK, but I'm going to leave it. Well, you can see behind me and behind Sikha, there is some traditional Nepali fabric. So although we're far away, we're united in the setting of our story. But I'm going to hand over to Sikha to explain a little bit about who we are and why we're telling this story. Hi, Sikha.
Hello, David. Thank you, Eric. Namaskar, everyone. I'm Sikha Gurung. Today, I and David are going to tell you a Nepali folk tale, Sunkeshri Rani, which I heard from my grandmother. And we've chosen to tell this story for three particular reasons. First and two being related to the theme of this event today, that is a story that we've loved for a long time, and a story that has begun or is related to conversations. And the third reason for choosing this story is because today in Nepal, it's a festival of Janai Purnima, if you can see this. It's a sacred thread wearing festival, and also known as Raksha Bandhan, which is influenced by Indian culture also. So Raksha Bandhan is a festival of brothers and sisters. So sisters come and tie different fancy threads on the wrist of their brothers, and brothers give them gifts, money, sweets, chocolates, and so on. So it's a happy festival. So that's why we've chosen. And as far as conversation is concerned, it was Sunkeshri Rani which helped me and David meet. So it was back in the year 2018 when I shared Sunkeshri Rani for the first time in David's storytelling event at IITFL conference. Since then, we've been working in a number of projects, and he's been guiding me, he's been mentoring me. Recently, I joined this course also where I made a lot of friends. So yeah, that's how it has led our conversation forward. So I am going to begin the story now.
So it was Sikha, before you begin, can you be, is there a way you can be a bit louder? Because you're quite quiet at the moment.
Yeah? Okay, I'll try to be louder. Okay. Thank you, David. Okay, I'm going to start the story now.
Okay, before you begin, Sophie is just joining us. Sophie, could you turn off your camera? Because we're hoping to just see the two storytellers. But okay, if Sophie, if you don't get the message, it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
No
David.
problem.
Go ahead, David,
Okay.
and carry on.
Okay, thank you, Eric. So David, am I loud enough now? Yeah, okay. So my dear fellow storytellers, it was the time of Hinduism. So it was the time of Satya Yuga in Hinduism, where a promise once made had to be kept. Sunkeshri, a girl with long, thick, and beautiful golden hair, lived with her family of 5 in a small village. Her father, her mother, her foolish elder brother, and her little younger brother. Everybody in the village thought that Sunkeshri looked gorgeous in a golden hair. Every day her mother used to oil and comb her hair with a wooden comb. And she used to count each strand of hair every day. And she would get happy to find the same number every day. But one unfortunate day, it so happened that when Sunkeshri Rani's mother was finished with oiling and combing the hair, she found that one of the strands of the hair was missing. She got very upset. So was the whole family. They started looking for the hair here and there everywhere, but they could not find it. They even looked for it inside and outside the house, but all in vain. So they thought that maybe Sunkeshri had lost it when she was playing, or maybe she was doing some chores in the village. But they didn't stop looking for the hair. They looked for the hair day after day, but without any success. It was really, really misfortune to lose such precious hair. But they had another way of finding it. So the family announced, Whoever finds our daughter Sunkeshri's golden hair that is missing will get to marry her. All the boys in the village got excited. They wanted to be the lucky one. So they immediately set out to search the golden hair. Among them was her foolish elder brother. He hardly understood the meaning of marriage. He thought that it might be some kind of a reward, so he wanted to get that. Eventually, it was Sunkeshri's foolish elder brother who got that hair. He took the hair from one of the closets of his sister's room to his parents and said excitedly, "Amma, mother, I found Sunkeshri's golden hair. Now she should marry me." It was a very difficult situation for the family. On the one hand, they had made the promise. On the second hand, it was Sunkeshri's own brother. And those were the days, as I said earlier, that promises when once made had to be kept. So, and also the villagers advised them not to defy the fate and not to commit the sin. So with a lot of dilemma and heavy hearts, they decided that Sunkeshri would get married to her own brother. The wedding ceremony started. Everybody started preparing for it. Her family, the neighbors came, the relatives came and stayed, the neighbors came to help. Children ran from here and there. Everybody in the village knew who Sunkeshri was getting married to, except for her. But it was like every bride, every would-be bride, though she was unaware of the fact that she was getting married to her own brother, she was very much happy and she was very excited for her marriage. She started preparing. On the fine day of her marriage, early in the morning, she was sitting in the veranda of her house, getting caressed by her village friends, the girls who had come to dress her up. It was then a crow flew towards them and sat in one of the branches of the tree nearby. It was really hungry and said, "Sunkeshri, Sunkeshri, if you give me one piece of bread that you're eating, I'm going to tell you something that you must know." Sunkeshri paid no heed to the crow, but the crow repeated, "Sunkeshri, Sunkeshri, if you give me a piece of bread that you're eating, I'm going to tell you one important thing that you must know." Sunkeshri shooed the crow in irritation because it was stopping her from getting dressed up. But when the crow kept on repeating the same thing, Sunkeshri thought that she should give a piece of bread just to avoid the crow from disturbing her. As soon as the crow ate the piece of bread quickly, it said, "Sadly, Sunkeshri, I have to tell you that the boy who you are getting married to is your own elder brother." When Sunkeshri heard this, she could not believe it. She was shocked. She thought that the crow might be playing trick on her because she had kept it hungry for quite a while. But when the crow kept on repeating the same thing and said that it was not lying, Sunkeshri thought that she must talk to her mother. She ran to her mother and said, "Amma, mother, is it true that I'm getting married to my own brother?" Sunkeshri's mother said sadly, "We're truly sorry, dear, but it was your brother who found your golden hair, and we had to keep the promise." As soon as Sunkeshri heard this terrible news, she ran, she cried, she ran out of the house, out of the village and into the forest. When she ran, her all family members followed her, said her to stop, but she would not listen to anyone. She was devastated. She ran and ran deep into the forest until she reached the tree which led her to Swarg, heaven. And she started climbing the tree. But when she was climbing the tree, her father told, "Sunkeshri, stop, daughter. Chori, stop. Please do not break the promise that we've made. Please, you must get married to your own brother. We are bound by the promise that we made, dear daughter. Get down." Sunkeshri said with extreme grief, She looked down to her father and said, "Dear father, I would rather see you dead than marry my own brother." As soon as Sunkeshri uttered these words, her father fell dead on the floor. When her mother saw that, she was full of sorrow and she pleaded Sunkeshri to get down, but she uttered the same word and her mother fell too. Then her foolish elder brother, who she was due to get married to, came and threatened her. "Sunkeshri, are you going to get down or should I cut down the tree?" Sunkeshri again said with extreme sadness, "Dear thy brother, rather than getting married with my own blood, I would rather see you dead." And so the brother fell down dead too. Now only the little younger brother was left.
Didi, Didi, older sister, Didi, why are you climbing the tree? Why are you leaving me? I have just arrived. I see my father, my own mother, my older brother dead here on the ground, and you are leaving me. Come back. But Sunkeshri answered me that she would not come back, that she was leaving this world of troubles and rising up into heaven, into Swarga. But take me with you, sister. I cannot look after myself. I am too young. How will I eat? How will I drink? How will I look after myself? I am a child. And finally, Sunkeshri said, if you will not cause me any trouble, if you will ask for no food and no water, then you can come with me. And I climbed higher and higher up that tall tree, and with my sister we rose through the clouds, higher and higher until we reached Swarga, heaven, the lush, green, rich forest. It was beautiful. My sister's hair shone, every strand of gold, brighter than ever seen before. There was no path, no track. We wandered through the green trees, lost. After a long time, "Didi, sister," I said, "bring me food. I am so hungry. I am so tired." "Do you not remember the promise you made to me?" said Sunkeshri. "You said that you would cause me no trouble. But sister, I am thirsty. Give me water at least." And finally she said, "Wait here under the tree." So I rested in the shade of the tree while Sunkeshri went. And when she returned, in her hands were berries. They looked so ripe and red and fresh. She said, "Brother, eat the berries, but do not drop a single one. You never know what may happen." I took the berries. "Oh, bring me water, sister." And she went to find water for me. Well, when I tasted one of these berries, the taste was so wonderful. I ate them greedily. And in my hurry, you know, I dropped a single berry on the ground, and there grew up from nowhere a great, surrounded by a wooden veranda. Behind it, a shed. All around, gardens, fields, pastures reaching into the forest. When my sister returned, her hands full of water, she said, "What have you done, my brother?" "I dropped a single berry. Give me water to drink, my sister, please." She put the water into my hands, and I drank. "Be careful," she said. "Do not drop a single drop of water." But of course, in my thirst, one drop fell on the ground, and there appeared a herd of the finest heavenly cattle. "Oh no," said Sunkeshri to me. "Look what you have done." "But sister, all is well. Sister, oldest sister Sunkeshri, here you and I can live. Nothing more we need. You will look after the house. You can clean and you can cook. You can sweep. You can clean out the cattle shed behind the house. I will take the cattle to the pastures. I will graze the cattle, and when I return, You will bring me water, you will bring me food. We need nothing else, my sister. The cows will give us milk. There is food in the forest. Well, finally she agreed, and I was happy. But I said to my sister, Sunkeshari, your beauty is extraordinary. Make sure if anyone should come to the house and call for you, cover your face. Cover your face in charcoal paste, so they will not see your beauty. I will not lose you. I went into the forest to graze the cattle, and there I was so happy. I made a swing from vines hanging from a branch of a tall tree. I swung back and forth. I came home. My sister waited for me, brought me water. I put the cattle in the shed. She brought me the finest food. All was well. And every day I reminded her, and every day I was glad. And every day when I was swinging in that tree, I sang the same song of joy.
Chuchu hai, mataki ramro. Haina, mero didi nai ramro. Chuchu hai, I'm so beautiful. Oh no, it's my sister who's more beautiful than me. Every day he used to sing the same song in a cheerful tone. One day, a prince from the nearby kingdoms, heavenly kingdoms, was riding on his horse through the forest. He overheard the boy sing the song, and he went there and saw. He saw that the boy repeated the same song again and again. Chuchu hai, mataki ramro. Haina, mero didi nai ramro. The prince came the next day and he heard the same song. He wondered, how might the girl look? And he rode away. The next day, the prince came and heard the boy sing same song. And this time he decided, I must go and see this boy's daughter, who he says is so beautiful. So he quietly followed the boy. After he gathered all the cattle, he followed towards his house. And there, when he reached the house, in the veranda, he saw the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. He was mesmerized by her beauty and immediately fell in love with the girl. He decided that he will go and meet her. So the next day, when the brother went to the forest to graze the cattle, he went there and said, "Excuse me, is there anybody in the house? I'm thirsty. Please give me water." Sunkeshri came outside the house with a glass of water and all the charcoal over her face. But as soon as the prince saw her, he said angrily, "How dare you give me water that way? I'm the prince of this kingdom. Give me in a korua, that is a copper vessel, or else I'm going to leave your house thirsty." Sunkeshri got scared because it was a sin to send a guest away hungry or thirsty. So she came outside with the korua in her hand. She came near the prince and she poured the water into his anjuli, the cup that he had made with both of his palms together. As the prince drank water, he looked at Sunkeshri as if he was waiting for some moment. It was then suddenly he splashed the water into Sunkeshri's face, and all the darkness of the charcoal washed away from her face, and her true beauty got revealed. He fell in love with Sunkeshri again, and Sunkeshri also fell in love with the prince. Then she lifted her hand, she took him on his horse, and they rode away to the palace.
Didi, sister, I am home. I returned with the cattle from the forest, but there was no answer from my sister. I took the cattle round to the shed, but oh, what a stink! The cattle shed had not been swept out. The dung was still there. I went round to the veranda, sat, Didi, I am thirsty, bring me water. Bring me water, sister. She did not come. When I passed through the threshold of the house, oh, all was in a mess. The dishes unwashed, the floor unswept, and there was the comb made of ivory that my sister used to comb her golden hair. Oh, my sister, she has been taken. Someone has found out her beauty. That night I could not sleep. In the morning I tried to prepare myself food, but I am too young. Oh, I took the cattle into the pastures, but I did not swing. I did not sing. My heart was full of sorrow. The next night I spent alone in the house, but the next morning I determined, I cannot look after myself. I am nothing without Sunkeshari, my sister. I remembered what she had said to me, and I took the 2 chamar, one made of the white tail hairs of the yak, and the other sacred chamar, made from the black tail hairs of the yak. I swept the white chamar over the house and the shed and the fields were gone. I struck the cattle with the black chamar, and they disappeared. All that was left was forest. I set off alone. Didi, Sunkeshari. All day long I wandered and finally came to the outskirts of a small village. I had never met anyone in Swarga before. The people were kind. Have you seen my sister? She is beautiful with long hair made of gold. But they had not seen my sister. Kindly they gave me food. They offered me a place to sleep on their veranda. I offered work. I chopped wood in exchange for their kindness. And then on I went, walking through the forests. The next village I came to, I asked again. There was no sign of my sister. There I looked after their cattle in exchange for a little rice, hospitality, a place to lay my head. Every day I wandered, and the days turned to weeks, and the weeks turned to months, and I was full of sorrow and despair. Only then did I reach that great city with a golden palace. By that time my heart was heavy. I could not even look up as I wandered alone towards the golden palace.
Sunkeshri saw him from the distance. She was in the veranda of the palace where her dasi, that is her maidservant, was caressing her golden hair with a golden comb. She said, who might that boy be? He looks so much like my brother. But as the boy came nearer, she got to see that it was her own brother. She was so happy and she immediately called, Bhai, dear brother, please come here. But the brother looked down and said, sorry, Didi, sister, I don't talk to strangers. Sunkeshri called him a number of times, but he did not come. Then Sunkeshri had an idea. She snatched the golden comb from her maid's hand and dropped it from the balcony of her palace and said to the boy, dear Bhai, will you please pick that comb up for me? But the boy denied to go inside the palace. And she said, if it was my own Bhai, my brother, he would immediately pick that comb and give it to me. Then the brother decided to go inside the palace. He went, he picked up the comb without looking at anybody, and as he was going to give the comb, he saw in that golden comb a golden strand of hair. He immediately looked up to see the pleasant face of his sister who was watching at him affectionately. He immediately ran inside the palace. He went upstairs in the veranda and hugged his sister. "Oh, dear sister, where were you? I missed you so much." They hugged and kissed each other for a long time. And in the evening, the prince came back and said, "Oh, dear brother, welcome, welcome to the palace. It's so good to see you, because it was you who helped me meet my beautiful wife, Sunkeshri Rani, the queen with golden hair. You can live here forever." Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, everybody, please turn your camera back on if you want to participate in the conversation. Wonderful. Okay. Sikha, tell me what in that story do you especially connect with? Why do you love that story?
I love this story because it's told by my maternal grandmother, who is not educated at all. But then, you know, whenever we went to our maternal home, that is Mama Ghar in Nepali, she used to tell this story every time. We were 5 siblings. We used to take turns to sleep with our grandmother. She used to tell the same story in different ways. Every time she used to forget some part of the story, but still she would make her own part and tell us the story. Every year it was the same. So I grew up with this story. So Sunkeshri Rani is like my grandmother in every way. So I love it. I love it.
Okay, so you love the social event in which the story was told, but what about the character of the lady do you especially find interesting?
Character of Sunkeshri?
Yes.
Yes, actually, as a small child, because at that time, you know, being fair, having golden hair was kind of fancy that we had, you know. But it was only when I grew up I understood the beauty of every color, everything, you know. So that time I was quite attracted. Every girl was actually. So I thought having golden hair and fair, beautiful. So maybe, and the prince coming and the horse, you know, and also the bond of the brother and sister, I guess, because I also used to look after my younger brother in the same way that she does in the story. So there are many reasons.
But she does leave him at one point, right? She goes off with the
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, I think that is where we have to understand that love is blind at some point of time, especially at very young age. Maybe.
Anybody else? Any comments, questions? Does the story resonate with you in some way?
I'd love to, the tandem telling I thought was brilliant. It was brilliant. I didn't know what you know, you stopped and then all of a sudden a different voice came up and it was a surprise. It was a surprise.
We were interested in exploring the possibility of Sikha telling the story as the storyteller, the narrator, but then me coming in as the other secondary character in the story, the brother, talking in the first person, so stepping inside the character. It was an experiment that we both were attracted to playing with.
It was beautifully done. I have to say that I really was upset with her that she didn't insist that the prince take her back and pick up her brother. I mean, my heart just dropped that, okay, you can go off with him, but come back for your brother.
Yeah.
Isn't it a rite of passage, though? Doesn't Sunkeshri now need to be moving on with her life and finding that next stage?
Yeah, but she had responsibility for somebody.
Yeah.
I'm just a little boy.
Yeah, who gave her a home and gave her cattle and gave her food and gave her. No.
I thought she was pretty mean as a character. I thought she was pretty mean. And I have a little brother myself, and there has been many a time I would love to have done all sorts of things to that little brother, but I don't think I could ever have abandoned him. He's also a storyteller, and I must now say to him, we must do a tandem story, because I loved it. I thought it was fabulous. And I thought you
Yes, I
told it
thought.
very well, Sikha, but I don't like your character.
Maybe my grandmom could not analyze such things. Maybe
No.
she just, yeah, she just wanted to tell us an engaging story.
But she took him back in the end, which is the main thing.
She did.
Yeah, I
There's
think
another-
we could change the ending.
There's another element to all of this, and that is that Sikha and I met a couple of years ago at an English language teaching conference where I host an annual storytelling event where teachers come from all over the world to the UK. And there was an immediate sharing of interest, and Sikha's very interested in creativity in education. And there is a kind of, I haven't said this to you before, Sikha, but I do feel there's a kind of brother-sister kind of relationship between us, of sharing ideas and cultures. So there's a sense of fraternity or sorority across the world that goes on, don't you think?
Yes, I think I'm so happy that you said that, David. I also actually feel that there's an immediate connection, and then we share so many things in common. The way he treats story in different creative ways really, really attracted me. I've learned so much from him. I've applied them in my classroom, like his students tell stories and we draw pictures, the best moment of the story, and so many other things I've learned from David since 2018. He's my mentor, he's my brother, he's my everything related to storytelling. And I really am happy to have met him.
I think the chemistry you're talking about is very well felt in the way you're telling the story together in tandem. I also liked very much the use of props. It was just quite right, and you did it in a beautiful way, especially that we're stuck in these little squares. You really succeeded with the props to sort of like enlarge the space that you're telling the story in. And I loved the way you got into, I mean, the way you worked not only with intonations, which is something I can do, but also with something that for me is very hard, which is really change your voice as you change characters. That was very nice.
Thank you so much.
That's lovely.
Okay, let's go on to another teller. Yes. Okay, Rona, are you ready?
I am indeed. Thank you.
And you are going to tell a story that you have composed yourself?
Yes, not entirely. I would love to take all the credit for it, except that it was actually given to me as an idea, a story idea, and I absolutely loved it. It was given to me by another storyteller, which I can tell you about at the end, if you like. I'm trying to get rid of something that's on my screen right now, sorry.
Okay, now hold on. I'm going to do a mute all.
Yeah.
Yep, mute all. And now, Rona, please turn your microphone on. Yes, go ahead, Rona.
I was chatting away for the last 5 minutes there. Didn't realize I wasn't unmuted.
Oh, you were on. Yes, your mic is on.
Okay, that's grand. Well, I've told this story a few times recently, so I'm sorry if any of you guys have heard it before, but this was the story I agreed with Eric that I would tell if I had been called as the standby, if you like, at the 24-hour storytelling, visual storytelling. So, and I've just stuck with it. That's the story that I'm going to tell now. So, and anyway, if you have heard it before, it probably won't sound anything like it did the last time, because my stories are sort of like they're organic. They grow, they go one way and then another, and then they come back. So, the young woman was walking along the sandy beach. It was her favorite thing to do, normally. And she always did it barefoot so that she could feel the sand between her toes. And she would squeeze the wet sand. And when she pulled her feet up, she would hear that delicious sound. But on this particular day, none of that. No looking out across the sea. No looking out across the horizon. Nothing. Head down, walking slowly along the beach, with a very heavy heart. You see, she had a secret and she didn't know how to deal with it. And she was worried. She was very worried. And as she walked on, suddenly something glistened in front of her, and it was a conch shell. Quite a big conch shell, at least for that part of the world. She was in the west of Scotland, and it was some 150 years ago. So it was unusual to find something like that on the beach. And she picked it up, and she heard that delicious sound as she pulled it from the sand. And she held it to her ear, and it made a little tinkling sound. And as she held it closer, she expected to hear the sea, but that's not what she heard. What she heard was a voice. Well, you've took your time. I've been waiting ages for you to come and listen to me. She was absolutely flabbergasted. She held the shell away from her ear again. Is this thing speaking to me? Am I losing my mind? And she put it back to her ear again, this time slowly. And she heard the voice again. Yes, I'm speaking to you. I need to tell you now because I know what's wrong. I know what's wrong with you. And I want to tell you my story so that you'll know what to do. Now there's a huge flat rock if you look behind you. Go and sit there and listen to what I have to tell you. Well, the young woman was absolutely stunned. This shell was speaking to her, but she wanted to hear more. So she went and she sat on the flat rock, put the shell back to her ear again. When we were young, my sisters and I and our friends, we misbehaved, as teenagers do. And despite the warnings, despite the many warnings that we got from our father and everybody else, we carried on with this very dangerous game. We would swim under the boats, you see, and we would slice open the nets and set all the fish free. And we would prise open the lobster creels and set the lobsters free, and the crab pots, and anything else. And the fishermen never knew. They always assumed that the nets had been caught on the rocks. None of them ever took the time to look and see that the nets had actually been sliced clean open. The game went on, and again, until one day, when I was trying to swim away, I wasn't fast enough, and I got caught in the net, in the tangled piece of net that had dropped when the fish fell out. I felt myself being pulled up, and I knew I had only seconds to make my wish. But the sun was shining, not the moon. I'd have to make my wish to the sun goddess. I did. I asked her to give me my human legs. I'd never had them before, because if you get your human legs, your life may be short-lived. As I landed with a thump on the deck of that fishing boat, I was naked and I had legs. My hair, thankfully, was long enough to cover my modesty, but the kindly ship's captain took his jacket and put it over me. Where have you come from, lassie? What's happened to you? What's that bump on your head? Did you get that when you fell into the boat? Or did you fall in at the harbour? Tell us what's happened to you. Well, I looked at him and pointed to my ears, and he thought I was deaf. No, I was pretending to him that I didn't understand his language. Oh, I see. Aye, I can tell by your colouring. You're probably from somewhere further east. Aye. I don't know what to do with you, lassie. There's no a doctor about for 50 miles. I'll take you home to the Godmother. Now there's an oxymoron if you've ever heard one. The Godmother was his mother-in-law. And she was called the Godmother if she was domineering and extremely bossy. And this one was. But he took me home to her And she looked after me as if I was one of her own. She fed me, clothed me, looked after me, told me all about the village, and I never once spoke a word to her. I couldn't let them know who I was. I couldn't give them even the slightest hint, so I kept my mouth closed in case I gave myself away. She told me about her son who was due back any day soon. Oh, aye, lassie. You might have seen a fella too in your day, but you'll no have seen one like my boy. Oh, my Johnny, he's so braw. Oh, he's a handsome boy. I know I'm going to lose him soon. Somebody's going to grab his heart. Well, little did she know it was going to be me, because the next day we heard the kids' shoes on the cobbles running up the hill. Johnny's home, Johnny's home. And she threw open the door and ran down to meet him. And she threw her arms around him. And he was twice as tall as her. He picked her up and hugged her. And they both came back to the house. As soon as I saw him, I was lost. I had never seen anything so beautiful in my life. This mop of black curly hair, these huge blue eyes, and that smile that just dazzled. I was in love. Now I had a choice. If I stayed here with this newfound love, I knew my time would be limited as a mortal. The sun god, 7 years. The moon god, 11 years. That's all I would have as a mortal. What a choice. Well, the choice was made for me, because only a few months later, when I began to speak the English tongue, he asked me to marry him, and I said yes. And I would love to tell you that we lived happily ever after, but that's not what happened. This is what happened. Just 7 months later, my child was born, my beautiful, beautiful boy. And when I looked into his eyes, I fell in love for the second time. And I held him close to my chest. And I rocked. But I was not rocking with pleasure or with happiness. I was rocking with grief as the tears fell from my eyes. What do I do? Do I stay? Do I stay and watch my son grow? Do I watch him on the beach with his friends playing football? Do I watch him with his first girlfriend? Do I watch him getting married at the harbour church? I could see all of that from the huge rock out there in the sea. Or do I stay and have 7 years and then nothing? I'm gone. When my son was a few months old, he lay back in his father's arms, fast asleep at the fireside. And his father was also fast asleep, his head to one side, my son's head in the crook of his chest. And I looked at them both, and my heart bled. I couldn't go. I had to see my child grow. I couldn't just have these few years and then nothing. My mind was made up. I walked over and I lifted the foot of my baby son and I squeezed it until all the blood came to the heel. And I took a pin from my apron and I pricked his little heel and it bled. And I prayed that he wouldn't wake up, and he didn't. There was just a little sound and then nothing. And I caught one of those blood drops and it landed in my hand, and as it landed, it became a tiny red blood footprint. And I put it in my pocket. And then I caught my tear, my very own tear in my hand, and it crystallized into a small pearl drop. And I put that in my pocket. And I kissed my son's forehead. And I kissed my husband's forehead. And I turned and I ran. I knew I have to run. If I didn't run, I might stop and go back. I ran all the way out the door, all the way down to the shore. I ran into the sea. This was the first time I had been in the sea since the day I was dragged out with the net. I felt the water around my ankles and then my knees and up to my thighs. Oh, it felt wonderful, wonderful. And then reached my waist, and there she was, my tail, all 8 feet of her magnificence. Blue, purple, green, yellow, all of the colours of the sea. Oh, my heart was breaking, and at the same time, my heart was glad to be back. I looked, and I saw the rock, and I swam to the rock. Elegant, weightless, and so, so sad. When I reached the rock, I pulled myself up to it, and I lay there, and I watched, and I waited until dawn. My husband must have slept in the chair all night with the baby in his arms. And he must have got up at some point early in the morning and saw that I was not there. And he came and opened the back door with the child still in his arms. And he looked down to the sea where I was, on the rock. And he held our son up. And he pointed. He knew. He'd always known. I never thought. Because when I had the language, I couldn't shut up. I told him lots of stories about the sea. He knew where I had gone, and he pointed and showed, and my little son waved to his mama. I watched him grow. I watched him play football on the beach. I watched him with his first girlfriend. He was only 12 years old, and they walked hand in hand in the sand. I watched him with his first real girlfriend. I saw them kissing and cuddling on the beach when they thought nobody else could see. I saw him get married in the little church by the harbour. I saw my first grandchild playing in the sand. I saw my first grandchild get married. I saw my first great-grandchild playing on the beach. So go home now, lassie. Go home and tell your secret. I'm sure it will be okay. And the young woman, speechless, hand cramped with holding on to this shell, couldn't move. But eventually she pulled herself up off that rock, pulled on her shoes and ran all the way home. She pushed open the kitchen door, and there was her husband at the cooker. One child on his hip, another one clinging onto his trouser leg. Dad, Dad, Dad. Stirring a pot of beans on the stove. 2 other children playing at the table, and another one running around the kitchen with a ball. Where the hell have you been, lassie? I'm about off my head. Where have you been? Oh, I just couldn't come home. I couldn't tell you. You've got no idea. It's so bad. Sit yourself down. What's happened to you? Here, have this cup of tea I've just made myself. You need it more than I do. She took a couple of sips of that hot, sweet tea, and it gave her some courage. Oh, well, she said, I'll just have to tell you. I'm pregnant. And look what we've already got, and I'm pregnant. I said, is that all? For God's sake, I thought there was something wrong. She said, we can hardly feed the ones we've got. I said, another one's not going to make any difference. So drink your tea and get ready to wash up these dishes because it's your turn.
Okay. Enchantingly told. Why is it that the people in your part of the world, Scotland, have this special relationship with silkies, with mermaids? You know, of all the countries in the world, and all the cultures by the sea, it seems especially Ireland and Scotland has a special place for this kind of folklore. Any idea why it is?
I'm sorry, Eric. What do you mean folklore? It's true. Well, now we are all brought up on story, particularly the stories that have become familiar with living by the sea.
Yeah.
But funnily enough, I was born in the concrete city of Glasgow. I never saw the seaside until I was about 12 years old. But the stories live on, and there are some horrible stories, you know, as well about the Kelpies. Do you know about the Kelpies?
No.
Well, the Kelpies are the horses of the same ilk. They live in the sea or they live out of the sea.
Oh.
If you've been a good person and you find yourself trouble in the water, then the Kelpie will save you. He will take you on his back and ride you out of the water. But if you've been bad, he will drag you under the sea and drown you. They're not so nice stories. You're all very quiet. Say something.
Well, it's a very quiet story.
Rona, have you written that story anywhere? Is there anywhere where we could read it?
Well, it's hopefully going into a book of 7 that's called 7. But David Heathfield might have had an inkling of where that story came from. Does it ring any bells, David?
Absolutely, Rona. I think it was about a long time ago, maybe 12, 13 years ago.
Probably around about then.
In a workshop?
Yep. Sheila Woolard, that was her story. She took a red bead, a little footprint bead, and another bead, and she came up with a story. It wasn't that particular story. I've rewritten it, if you like, the way I like to tell it, but she gave me that story, and I said, don't be ridiculous, Sheila. You must give it to your husband. You know, he's a storyteller, Alan. She said, oh, no, a man could never tell that story. It has to be a woman. And Sheila, to this day, still doesn't tell stories. She'll write them, but she won't tell them. But she's ashamed because she does write some nice stuff. Yeah. No, I usually write my own, but I didn't write that one, Rena, no.
Yeah.
I have a question for the character as she's in the sea and watching her son grow up and play. And did you ever have a urge to come back on land, or was it enough to see life from the sea?
Well, no. There's another version of the story which is a little bit longer. I had to shorten it a bit because it was just to be 10 minutes. But in the other version of the story, she frequently comes back to visit, but she can't come on land because she doesn't have legs. She'll never have her legs again. You only get them one time. But what she does do is she comes back and she climbs into a little boat and she goes right up to the harbour, and she invites, and she's got herself wrapped in a blanket, and she invites the children to come and sit here on the boat, and she tells them stories, of course. So, yeah.
It's such a feeling of melancholy that she's left. I feel for her husband. I feel for her son.
The first time I told that story, I cried. You know,
Rona.
you can't imagine somebody having to leave their baby.
I like the fact that he knew where she was. That was such a relief. I felt such a relief that he didn't just feel abandoned, but he went to look and he knew where to look, and he could hold up the child and he could make sure that she was part of all the growing up. That was
in my head, Rena, I couldn't imagine just leaving. So there had to be something else. And it had to be that she started to talk too much about the sea. And of course, he put 2 and 2 together and came up with, she's a mermaid. Why wouldn't you?
I wanted to say I really like the frame, the story within the story. And it kept me wondering, how is it going to go back to the girl with the shell? And I also just have to say I love your Scottish dialect. If you can bottle that somehow, send me a case. I will order it and pay for the shipping. It's just music.
Thank you. That's very kind. Thanks.
That story.
When I moved to England, I started to lose my accent very slightly. And I went home at one point when I'd been here for about 2 years, and my sisters were saying to me, "Oh my God, you sound so English." I don't sound English at all, but compared to them, I did. So I've been away from Scotland for 30 years, you know, but I go back obviously frequently. But I now work at keeping my accent because I do think it's a nice accent for telling stories, I hope.
Just for clarification, that story began from a very simple idea in a story making workshop I led at the Society for Storytelling gathering many years ago. And it was simply starting with a shell and walking along a beach and finding a shell. And it was story making through inquiry, just asking open questions. And then groups broke off and did that process, and that's the story that emerged in your group. I don't believe it was Sheila on her own. I think it was 2 or 3 of you created that story, but you're remembering it as Sheila's.
Well, do you know what, David? I'm very lucky that I can remember anything, because you know I had a brain hemorrhage 5 years ago.
Oh dear.
Stories that I had lost. And anyway, something happened. Oh, I know what it was. My granddaughter got a book about mermaids, and then that story came back to me. I was like, yes, I found another one. So I couldn't be certain, but I know that Sheila really, I give her the credit, because I do remember that much, that she was the one who came up with the story coming from the shell.
She was the one that cried in the workshop. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Now, Radha, are you here? I don't see Radha. And
Yes, Eric, I'm here.
Oh, you're here, but your camera's turned off. Okay. So you're in the wings. Sanjeev, are you here? Sanjeev Singhal?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, you're both here. Okay, so that means we have 4 more stories. First, Manjiri is going to tell about Lord Ganesh curses the moon.
Yeah.
Then Vishal, you're going to tell about transforming one's life. Radha, you're going to tell the seed of truth. And Sanjeev, you're going to tell about the princess and the frog's wishes. Okay, so Manjiri, you are next. And you mentioned that a festival for Ganesh is coming up, right?
Right. Yes.
And is this story associated with the festival?
It is a mythological story, basically. And it's among one of the few stories that are told about Lord Ganesha.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Please introduce yourself, the story.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. My name is Manjiri Gogate. I am a storyteller, but I have been using it as an educational tool. This is the first time as a performance. So please bear with me. Thank you, Eric, for giving me this platform. Lord Ganesha used to love to go to his devotees' houses and give them his blessings, and they would make beautiful prasad, delicious prasad for him, laddus, pedhas, modaks, and he would eat to his heart's content till his stomach was about to burst. And after that, they would sing devotional songs for him, aartis. Sukha karta, dukha harta, varta, vidnachi, nurvi purvi prem krupa dayachi, sarvangi sundara utishendurachi, kanthi zarte man mukta falachi. O Lord, who takes away our sorrow and gives us happiness, and who is covered with shendur, vermilion, and who has a garland of muktafar, pearls. Jai Dev Jai Mangal Murti, Darshan Matre Mana Kamana Purti. Jai Dev Jai Dev. O Lord, who blesses us and who takes away all our sorrow and who removes all obstacles in our path, please give us your blessings. Lord Ganesha, after finishing the Aarti, returned home on his beloved vehicle, the mouse, and they had to go through a forest. There were many trees in the forest. It was dark, and the moon was shining up in the sky. And there were some stars twinkling too. It was a long way home, and they were going slowly. Suddenly, a three-headed cobra came in front of the mouse. The mouse shivered and stumbled, and Lord Ganesha fell down. And all the modak, pedhas, laddus fell out of his stomach. Hey, watch out. I'm sorry, my lord. I got scared. Chandra, who was up in the sky, saw Ganesha fall down and started laughing. Ha ha ha. Ho ho ho. Lord Ganesha said, "Stop, Chandra. Don't laugh." He got up, took the snake and tied it around his stomach so that the ladus, pedhas wouldn't fall out again. And the moon continued to laugh. Ha ha, ho ho ho. Chandra was laughing and Lord Ganesha was really angry. So he broke off his tusk and hurled it at the moon. And the moon's light completely vanished. It became dark. The gods up in the Himalayas were wondering why it had become dark. And looking down, they saw what had happened. And they said, "Oh dear, now we must go to goddess Parvati and tell her son to forgive Chandra. We cannot have everything in darkness. How will the people be able to see in the dark? How will the children be able to read?" So they went to goddess Parvati and said, "Please tell Ganesha to forgive Chandra." Chandra, in the meantime, reached home on his mouse, and Parvati was waiting for him. "Ganesha, what did you do?" Ganesha knew what she was referring to, and by then his anger had dissolved too, because he could not stay angry for very long. So he said, "I got angry with Chandra. He was laughing at me." She said, "You must do something, Ganesha." So Ganesha looked at Chandra and said, "Slowly your light will go on increasing till again there will be a full moon in the sky. But again, as a punishment, so that you remember that you must not do this again the light will go on diminishing and there will be a smaller moon and then it will become dark and there will be no moon. So when you go out, sometimes you see a small moon, sometimes a little larger moon, sometimes a full moon, as it is today, and sometimes there is no moon." Now, just in praise of Lord Ganesha, who is the God of all beginnings and who removes all obstacles, I will sing a shlok. Vakratunda Mahakarya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurve Devo Sarvakareshu Sarvada. Thank you.
Thank you. it's so nice to have a variety of different types of stories. And, you know, it's all unified because it's all emotion, it's all characters. It really, it shows where there's a certain equalizing effect between the human, the divine. What do you especially like about that story, Manjiri?
I like that forgiveness is the most, what do you say, essential virtue of all.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice, Manjiri. We all grew up listening to all these Ganesha stories, and it feels very nice to listen to this story here also.
Thank you,
Very
Leena.
nice. Yes, I loved hearing it. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barry, you wrote an appreciation there. What did you especially like about the story, Barry?
Well, I appreciated Manjiri's, just your pace with it was really lovely. And I love the image of the mouse. That was a lot of fun. And I'm just not as familiar with, you know, with a lot of lore like that. So I appreciated that. And of course, the theme of forgiveness too.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, shall we go to the next teller? This is a real change of pace because like the very first story, this is a true life story. Vishal, will you introduce yourself and tell your story? And, and those of you, before you begin, those of you who are listening with your camera off, maybe turn your camera on for a few minutes because a teller likes to see people's faces. Okay, go ahead, Vishal.
Hi, Eric. Thank you for the opportunity. Hi, everyone. This is Vishal. I'm from Ahmedabad, which is in India. Right. This is a real life story. You know, I'm talking about 1998 when I was 11-year-old kid. I was shifted to a new school where actually students come from a very high-end posh families. Right. This is a huge campus, only ground floor structure, and every standard has about 4 divisions. In the center, there was a lawn and the classes on all the 4 sides. I remember an incident where we're all standing in a queue at the door of our classroom, waiting for our turn to come to go out to the assembly hall for the morning prayers. As you're waiting there, a teacher, my class teacher, she came to me and she asked, Vishal, why were you absent for last 2 days? And I said, ma'am, I will have fever. She said, you will have fever. I said, yes, ma'am, I will have fever. And she said, what rubbish. And she left. From standard 11, from being an 11-year-old kid to about 17-year-old. So the entire teenage, I was humiliated for not knowing English as a language. All the students, for about 240 students in the standard, they all made fun of me for not knowing English as a language. I'm talking about kids who would visit foreign countries twice a year, every year, because they had their relatives staying in the foreign countries, right? And I was coming from a school which wasn't just for the sake of saying an English medium school, it was an English medium school. I was humiliated. People made fun of me for about 6 years in a row. I was never considered a part of them. To an extent, they even made fun of people who were sitting with me on my bench. Honestly speaking, their external talk became my internal talk. I became more shy, more introvert. I started doubting my existence. I started pitying myself. And this all started showing up in my results. From 6th standard to about 9th standard, it went down to an extent that 9th standard, I scored 45% overall. Obviously, I wanted to improve when I started reading newspapers, the English newspapers, started watching Hollywood movies, which I never did before, right? But still, there was no improvement. In 10th, I little went up, the results went up, I improved my results, but 11th again, I went down to an extent that biology exams, I failed in a prelims exams. My parents were called to the school. I remember my dad came to the school to check the papers. And he asked, ma'am, what's wrong with him? And I still remember what she said. She said, sir, even if there are 3 students in the class, just 3 students in the class, your son will go unnoticed. I remember this as if this happened yesterday. I remember her voice, her tone in which she said. For about 2 days after that, I couldn't sleep. I was literally crying all those 2 days. I remember my mom was with me for all those time because she was afraid. She was afraid that, I might go into depression. I was not crying because I failed in biology. In any ways, I knew that I'm going to fail because I didn't give very well good exam. I failed because of what she said. She was, I'm talking about a time, teenage, just before you become an adult is the time when you're actually creating your identity. And this was creating my identity for myself. I had really worked hard on myself. Went to the college, good engineering college, literally worked hard on myself. And again, such an incident happened. There was a class called communication skills, and only the students who were coming from a vernacular mediums were allowed to enter the classroom. But that was a free lecture for us coming from an English medium school. But that time we decided to actually go on and attend the class. And to my surprise, it was a test that day. And the test was public speaking. Everybody had to come on the stage, take the mic in their hand and speak. And there were 6 students ahead of me who were all coming from a Gujarati medium. They could speak. And when my turn came, I went on the stage with the mic in my hand and I was standing. And I couldn't speak. I was shivering. Ma'am asked, what's your name? And I couldn't say a single word. To an extent, my friends shouted from the classroom. They said, Vishal, what's your name? Vishal, she's asking your name. And still I couldn't say a single word. And I got down from the stage. But that day I decided that no matter what happens, I'm going to prove myself in a way that I started participating in every event that happened henceforth. A drama, a skit, dancing, singing, every event that happened in the college, I participated. And that was my level of confidence. Talking about the masters, when I went to do the masters, the first year of first class, wherein there was an orientation and there were like 6 classes put together in a big auditorium, they made a team. Picking up 1 student from every class, they made a team and they gave us a topic to present. Okay, we came runners up the next day. I was allowed to speak with a friend of mine. And after that, when we went back to our class, another assignment was given, and the same girl who presented with me in the first session was asked to be with me in my team, and she denied. She said, "I'm not going to be with Vishal in the same team." And I said, "Why?" It was very embarrassing to see her saying no to me in front of the entire class. And honestly, she said this in front of everyone, and she said, "You know why I don't want to be with you? Because you overshadow everyone who is with you. You were amazing when you presented last time, and hence I'm not going to be with you this time." And this girl has been a convent student right through her kindergartens, right? As we move ahead, this is interesting. As we move ahead to the last year of the college, the campus placements, I was not the one who was coordinating, but the people who were coordinating went to another city to invite another company to come for the campus placements. And I had to go to invite a company which was based out of our city. As I went there, this is the biggest company in India for architectural works. As I entered the office of the HR head of the company, and I said, "Sir, this is Vishal, and I'm coming from so-and-so college, and these are the kind of students that we have, and I'm here to invite you for the campus placements." And he agreed to come for the campus placement. I said, "Sir, I'll make all the necessary arrangements for you." And when I was about to leave, I asked him, "Sir, if you have any questions for me?" And he said, "Yes, I have one question for you, Vishal." I said, "Sir, please tell me." He said, "Where did you do your schooling from?" I said, "Sir, the same city." He said, "College?" I said, "Sir, the same city." I said, "Sir, I'm born and brought up in this city." And he said, "Vishal, I've never seen anyone from this city speaking such a good English that you speak." This is probably the biggest compliment that I got till that day, right? The same night, few of my seniors were working in the same company. I got a call from a senior to come to the hostel building. As I went there, he said, Vishal, you don't have to sit for any other campus placements because you're already selected for this company. Now, I only went to invite this company to come for the campus placements and for nothing else. They didn't take my written exam. There was no group discussions happening. There was no personal interview. I was selected directly by the way I communicated with them and invited them for the campus placements. As we move on, I worked there for a few years, started my own company, became a part of a world's largest referral election organization, which is BNI. Within 2 years, I was picked to be on the launch team, which is I was selected as a launch ambassador for BNI Ahmedabad. Okay, and last year I got an award in Poland, an international award in Poland for being the best launch director for the city. And the launch director has nothing to do but communicate with the members to convince them to become a part of us, right? Lastly, I would say about 6 months back, just before COVID, I'm talking about last October, a friend of mine, as a part of service, he goes to a government schools to teach every weekend. Okay, I'm talking about government schools where all the students come from lower income groups, kids of rickshaw auto drivers, of vegetable vendors, of peons. They all study in this school, and this guy goes there to teach every weekend. He asked me if I can go with him and do some value addition. And he said, what can you teach? I said, sir, I'll teach mathematics. After taking 2 classes of mathematics, there was this young kid about 10 years, 11 years old. He came to me and he said, I'll speak this in English, in Hindi. He said, sir, aapko English bolna aata hai? I said, yes, I can speak in English. He said, kya aap humko English sikha sakte ho? He said, can you teach us English? And I said, yes, I can teach you English. And with this, he asked the entire class if I can teach them English. I'm talking about kids who doesn't know what does father mean in English. Okay, and I took 6 sessions with them, and after 6 sessions, I invited the principal of the school to come and see the performance of the kids. There were about 38 students in the class, and not only about their name, their father, mother, grandparents, niece, nephew, what are their hobbies, and what do they aspire to become in future. They could all speak on the stage with the mic in front of about 100 people. Okay, that was the day that I decided that this isn't going to stop here, and I'm going to add value to people's life in every possible way. Thank you. That's it from my side, Eric. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay. So there were a number of turning points in there. The first one was when you used the future tense instead of the past tense. You said, "I will have fever." That was a difficult one. And then when that teacher said, "Your son would not be noticed in a classroom, even if it was a classroom of 3 people," I think as you told it, that was the time when you really started to determine that you were going to change, right? That you were going to develop. And when you told it the other day, you mentioned that was when you started listening to English language more on movies and all. But then again, later, someone said, or you said that you were on stage and you couldn't speak. And it sounded that was not so much about English language, that was just you were scared.
Correct.
Yeah, so then you had to overcome that kind of stage fright. So you had to really work to overcome. And then there was that real twist where that student said, I don't want Vishal on my team. I thought it was because she thought, you would make a mistake. But she said, I don't want him on my team because he's too good, because he'll overshadow me. By that time, the tide had turned.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Great. Anyone else? Any thoughts, comments, questions?
Vishal,
That was fantastic. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Rona.
Thank you. That was fantastic, Vishal. In my other life, I have 2 jobs. I'm a public speaking coach, so I know exactly where you're coming from. I've had guys who've, well, not guys, one singular, not plural, one guy who fainted the moment he was handed the mic. He had been so pent up with fear about this. I mean, it's like something like 82% of adults in the UK, the biggest fear is having to speak in public. David will know that because it's a very, very common fear. And at the moment, I'm working with a group of lads who English is not their first language, and they want to learn to be, you know, prolific public speakers. But I have to say, I'm well impressed with you, young man. You've done brilliantly. If you were at that stage where you couldn't even hold a mic, and now you're so fluent and confident, well done. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You know, there's linguistic fluency and there's emotional fluency. It's not just having to learn the language, it's also having the confidence and being at ease with oneself, even on stage. And yes, Vishal, you're doing very well with it. And I think
Vishal,
go ahead.
I wanted to say I appreciate that the story, the way you've structured it, is not only about you being told that when you were younger and then coming to a place where you no longer feel that, where you feel confident in yourself, but also that you've paid it forward, that you have become someone who inspires it in other people, and you recognize young people who may be at the same place where you were, and you know the value of supporting them rather than holding them back. And I also just want to say that I think this is probably a setting where we all can totally identify that. I imagine that even those of us who are native English speakers in this English speaking setting are also second language speakers of other languages and have faced the same challenges. I know I certainly have, and I assume it's true of all of us.
Okay. Okay, 2 stories to go. Radha, you're going to tell us the seed of truth.
Yes, Eric.
Okay, please introduce yourself and the story and go ahead.
Yes, Eric. Good evening, everyone. I am Radha. I'm a teacher. I'm here to share a story that I known from past almost 20 years. I would like to tell that story with you. The title of the story is The Seed of Truth. Once upon a time, there was a king, and the name of the king was Vidyadhara. He ruled a kingdom, and the name of the country is Gandhara. The king was really a good man. He was just, he was honest. He loved his subjects, he loved his people very much. He took care of his people. He wanted to know what his people is doing. Even his people loved us so much for his honesty, for his well-being, for everything. But there was only one worry for the king, that he had no children. That he is worried who is going to take care of the kingdom after his time. This was going in the mind of the king and also his people. In spite of all this, the king was an avid gardener. He loves gardening very much. He explores lots in gardening. He loves to plant trees, flowers, fruits, vegetables. He loved to spend a lot of time in them. One day, while he was in the garden, he got an idea. Soon after he left the garden, he went back to his palace and called all his people, all the ministers, and said, I will distribute few seeds to all the children in the kingdom. And I will give 3 months of time. The one who grows a beautiful plant, a healthy plant, will be the prince or the princess of the kingdom. As soon as the king said this, the news spread all over the kingdom. The very next morning, there was a long queue in front of his palace with curious children and anxious parents. They were standing in the line. And then the king gave them seats. At the end of the line, there was a little boy called Pingala. His father was a farmer. Just like the king, even the boy loved gardening. He liked to do with his father. He loved to be with his father, spend time with plants, trees, fruits, and vegetables. Even the little boy Pingala got seeds from the king. Pingala then went back to his home and he took a pot. He put some soil in it and then some water. He planted those seeds and waited for a few days. But nothing turned out. There was nothing in the pot. Pingala was curious to know. So he waited for a few more weeks. But still the pot was empty. So he thought of changing the soil. So he took another new pot. He took some new soil and he already had few seeds with him. He put all the seeds in the pot, put some water, and he made available with the sunlight. As the weeks passed on and on, there was nothing in the pot. Finally, the time frame, the 3 months which was given by the king, was over. So the next day, it was the time for all the children to bring their pots to the kingdom. So every children dressed up as best as they could and took the pots with beautiful plants and walked towards the palace. Pingala saw all of them and was sad about his pot, that he has not grown anything in the pot. He was sad in his own house. He sat in the corner. His father noticed everything. He just called, "Hey, my dear son, why don't you just take your empty pot to the king and show him? At least he would know that you tried your best." Pingala thought it was a good idea. So he dressed up with the best dress. He took his pot, empty pot, to the palace. So everyone, all the parents and all the children gathered in the palace. The king then arrived. He saw everyone plant one by one. There were beautiful plants with flowers, with beautiful flowers. The king saw everyone's one by one, but the king was not happy. Finally, this boy, Pingala, who was sad, went to the king to show his pot, to show his empty pot. The king asked the child, "Oh, my child, why have you got the empty pot? Why there is no plant at all?" Pingala said, "Oh, my dear lord, I did best. I did whatever I could do. I put the best soil, manure, water, sunlight, everything that that a seed would need to grow. But I don't know why. I don't know why the seed has not grown. I don't know why I have not got a plant over it." This was said by the little boy to the king. But the king smiled. To everyone's surprise, the king was smiling. And he said, "I got the prince. He is the prince of this kingdom." And then the king said, "I have given you all the roasted seeds which would never grow as a plant. I would want to test the honesty of all the children here. And this boy was honest throughout the time, and then he tried his best that he can do. He brought the empty pot, but he was honest. For his honesty, I would select him as the prince. There was so much of cheer in the crowd, and Pingala felt very, very happy about it. Then from the next day on, Pingala started coming to the palace. He started being with the king. He learned a lot of things from the kingdom. As soon as the king got older, the king passed away one day, and Pingala became the king of that country, Gandhara. And that's the end of the story. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. So honesty was the best policy.
Yes.
But I'd like to say a word to the first king. What was his name? The old king?
Vidyadhara.
Yes. Radha, will you play him for a moment? And let me ask you a question, okay, Sir King?
Sure.
I feel that you kind of played a mean trick on all those children. Because poor Pingala, he tried so hard and he was so disappointed. Fortunately, he was honest and it worked out for him. But he suffered a lot. Don't you feel bad that he suffered so much?
You know, to get some best results, right, we have to try and try. I felt that he tried and tried. He might suffer, he would have suffered, but he stayed honest. That's what is the best part of Pingala. Being honest at tough times is one of the most important thing that anyone has to, acquire.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for the king? Or any comments, any thoughts?
King.
Yes, Michael.
King, do you feel some of the other children might have been honest as well, but their parents interfered without them knowing?
Very true.
An honest child.
Yes, very true. It might be true because every child wants to be honest. We know that children speaks truth, but there might be some interference with the parents too.
Yeah.
But this boy Pingala and even his father were honest throughout, and they stayed with that.
His father, Pingala's father, even encouraged him to go.
Yeah.
Even though he had nothing to show.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Barry, you say you've told this story, Barry?
Yes, I've used this story before, and as I said in the chat, sometimes I get a student to be in the version I tell. It's Ping, because there's a picture book that we have. I don't know if you have it available, called The Empty Pot, which is lovely. And I have a student be Ping, and I play the Emperor. And it's always fun when I get to the point where I have other children, and I give them pots with flowers, and Ping has the empty pot. And the other children, I say, oh, that's beautiful, that's beautiful, that's beautiful. And then I look at Ping and I say, why did you not, why did you bring an empty pot? And often, if I've managed it well enough, the child is confident that I'm not going to embarrass him, but he's also like, I don't know what to do. And it's a lot of fun. And I find it to be an interesting story because in a way, I think it's targeted almost at an age, it's kind of set at about 5 or 6 or 7 years old, but some children who appreciate the story don't quite understand the twist of it about the cooked seed and the uncooked seed. So I find, and certainly the picture book that I have used or gotten it from is very kind of young targeted. But I think the complexity of the story is maybe for 7, 8, or 9 years old, but still, I love the story.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Barry. It means a lot to me. And
Barry is in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. So we see that story is popular in lots of different places.
Yes, I'm very glad to know.
I know that story from the adult point of view, Radha. where the king was looking for an honest man to marry his daughter, the princess. And he does the very same thing. He gives them all sunflower seeds. But they're already in the pot, the seed with the earth and everything. He gets his daughter to pot them up, and she's not very happy about that. But he says, this way we'll find you a good husband. And of course, it's the same old story. But he has boiled the seeds as well so that they will not grow under any circumstances. And all the other young men are going and replacing and buying, or not buying, but I should say stealing plants and putting them in and taking them back as if they were theirs. And the king's the only one who knows. He didn't even tell his advisors, so the secret couldn't get out. He's the only one that knows that those seeds will never grow. So he dispenses with the rest of them. And it's just the young man who hasn't, transposed his seed that becomes the prince. But it's a lovely story, but I loved that version of it that you've just told. Thank you. It was really lovely.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rona.
I know that it's not a biblical story, but it reminds me of some of the biblical parables. Where aren't there stories where 3 young people get a mission and they each try, but only one of them does it properly? Something like that? Yeah. Good.
I'm not sure about the story.
Yeah.
I think it might be the parable of
Radha, I'm sorry.
I was just saying, I think it's the
Michael.
talents.
What, Michael?
I think that's the parable of the talents, where the 3 servants get given the gold, look after 2 of them, work with it, and one of them buries it to keep it safe. Perhaps. Because that's that same sort of thing.
Very good. And,
well, Radha, may I? Radha, I'm in Israel, and we too know this tale and we tell it. And even though I know the tale, I really enjoyed listening to it when you told it. It was almost like listening to a slightly different story. So that was really nice.
That's amazing. Thank you very much.
And I've been thinking of another similar story lately of the king who has a contest between his 3 daughters. And each of the 3 has to compare him to something great. And the first compares him to sugar because it's so sweet. The next compares him to silk because it's so soft and beautiful. And then the third, the good one, compares him to salt.
Salt, yes.
Yes. So in all of these stories, the one of the young people, sometimes it's the youngest, is sincere, is truthful, and sometimes is punished for it temporarily, but in the end, the honesty wins out.
Yeah.
What was the third thing? I missed that, Eric.
The third child says, well, I love salt on all my food, so I want to compare you to salt. And the father says, what? You compare me to salt? It's so common. It's from the earth. It's almost like dirt. How can you dare compare me to salt? So he takes it the wrong way.
Yeah. There's another version where the 3 sons are told whoever fills the house in the morning will be left the house. And the 2 older brothers try and they're not successful. And the younger brother is so sad to see this not forthcoming. And he decides to go and get his fiddle and play them a tune to cheer them up. And his father says, you've filled the house with music, you shall have the house. So.
What the older brothers, what do they fill the house with? What do they try?
One of them filled the house with straw, and it did fill it up, but of course the straw settled, so there was a gap between the roof. And the second one filled it with the animals, which didn't work very well because they were on top of each other. And then the third son had no idea what he could fill the house with, but he just felt very sad that this idea that his father had wasn't working, and decided to play some music to cheer them all up. And he filled the house with music. So
great. Okay, our final story of the day, of the evening, is the Princess and the Frog, Sanjeev. Now, is this a story that you sometimes tell the children?
Hi. First of all, warm
namaste
to you all.
Yes.
It's me, Sanjeev from Nepal. Actually, it's a fairy tale. It's depend on what level of the learners you have selected. If you are going to teach the very young learners, you can select, you can make the lesson plan accordingly. If you are going to teach adult one, you can make the lesson plan accordingly. So it doesn't matter. It's the art of the teachers whom he is going to teach, tell the story, and how he is planning the lessons. That's depend on. So first of all, I would like to thank Sikha Gurung. I'm here because of him, because of her. Okay. So once I participated in her webinar, and she mentioned about this platform and wished anyone want to hear, and then I emailed her and I said that I want to be there, and she facilitated everything, and I am here. And I would like to thank Sikha for wonderful opportunities, and even I would like to thank you, sir. It's my second attempt, and you gave me this platform. I have no word for the thanks. Actually, I'm a teacher, and I believe that a teacher must be a storyteller. Once I listened to Dr. Ken Robinson, he said that if teacher is a good motivator, then he doesn't do anything. Students can learn himself or herself. They can find everything, but he must be a motivator. And so some language competency that I have selected here, 4 language skills: reading, writing, listening, speaking. And then apart from that, grammatical expectations that I have selected, that I have wished from this story, that grammar, pronunciations, sentence structures. And after my storytelling, I have wished some outcome from my learners, that is paraphrasing. And then another is that, script writings in that group, and then acting of that, whatever the story I am going to say. And then even some art and craft. In group, they will draw the scene and write the some sentences. In this way, I planned, and I did it in my class, and even I recorded it, and I use multimedia. I recorded their voice and converted into QR code, attached on the wall, and posted in my students' Facebook group, and I found quite interesting. So my story of today's title is The Princess and the Frog's Wishes. Sir, may I start it? Thanks. Once there was a king. He had a very vast kingdom. And he had one child, princess. She had very big. She didn't like to play with that toys. The prince was worried. What should he do? He brought many toys, but the result was the same. She didn't like to play with the toys. And there wasn't anybody with whom she could share her feelings. But he noticed that she had a ball, bouncing ball. And she likes to play with that bouncing ball. She loves the rhythm of that ball. The harder she presses the ball, the higher the ball moves. And she usually play with that ball. Once with that bouncing ball, she was playing in palace garden. A powerful wind blew the ball away. She ran away to catch the ball, but the ball fell into the pond. When she saw that the ball with whom she plays always disappeared into the pond, she began to cry, and said, whoever will bring that ball, whatever he or she wishes, I will give. And beside her, there was a frog who was listening, appeared to her and said, Princess, don't worry. I will bring your ball back, but you have to fulfill my 4 wishes. She got surprised. Frog is asking to fulfill the wishes. Okay, Tell me, what's your first wish? Frog said that, I know you eat in your golden plate daily. I want to eat in your golden plate. Princess thought, okay, granted. I allow you to eat my golden plate. What's your second wish? Frog said, I want to drink in your silver glass. Princess thought, okay, I will fulfill this wish also. Tell me, what's your third wish? Frog said, my third wish is that I want to sleep in your silky bed. Princess thought, what types of wish you wish? You want to sleep in my silky bed? Okay, granted. I allow you to sleep in my silky bed. What's your last wish? Then Frog said that before going to sleep, you have to give me a good night kiss. Oh, that's a strange wish. But she said, okay, I will fulfill all your wishes. And then the frog jumped into the pond, shoved the ball, came out with the ball. She became very glad looking at that ball. She grabbed the ball and forgot all the promises and ran into the palace. But at night, Frog reached the main gate of the palace. Soldiers said, stop. Hey, you are not allowed to enter inside the palace. Then the frog said, no, princess promised to fulfill my wishes, so I have come. Call her. And then soldiers entered into the palace and informed everything to the king. And king reached to the princess and asked, have you promised any frog to fulfill any wishes? Princess said, yes, I promised. Then the king said, now you have to fulfill the wishes. The frog was brought into the palace, set beside the princess, ate in her golden plate, drank in silver glass, and then said, princess, I'm feeling very tired. Let's go. I want to sleep in your silky bed. While the princess was taking the frog towards her room, on the way she said, I know, you can't sleep in my silky bed. You are not habitual of sleeping. In the garden, there is a small dish, lots of water there. Go and sleep. Frog said, no, I can't sleep here. I want to sleep in your silky bed. As she opened the door, the frog jumped into the bed and missed the bed and slept. And then the princess said, oh, thanks God, you forgot its last wish. And then this meantime, the frog woke up and said, fulfill my last wish. As soon as the princess kissed the frog, frog changed into a handsome prince. And then the prince said, thanks, princess. Because of you, I got my real appearance. You know, once I was in the jungle and I saw a holy man who was meditating. I disturbed the sand, and the sand cursed me and said, I will get my real appearance only after the princess, any princess, fulfilled my all 4 wishes. Because of you, I got my real appearance. Thanks a lot. As the prince was handsome, princess fell in love. Both reached to the king, and later king married them. They got one child. You know, you are so special. What was its speciality? Can anybody tell me? You know, he was good in lip jumping. So it's my story. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Now I know we had a little internet trouble while you were telling, but I understood the 4 wishes. I
Yes,
want to eat from the golden plate. I want to drink
yes,
from your glass. I want to
yes,
sleep in your bed. And I want
yes,
a good night kiss.
yes.
Yes. What
These were.
happened when he was in bed and he asked for a good night kiss? What happened at that point?
Yeah, when the princess kissed, and then the frog changed into a handsome prince.
Oh.
Yes. And you know, he said that once I was in the forest, I saw one saint meditating, and I disturbed the saint, and then the saint cursed me and made me frog. And
the
said
saint
that
cursed him.
yes, yes, and I will get my real happiness only after any princess fulfill my 4 wishes.
Mm-hmm. There's another version of it where when he asks for the goodnight kiss, she picks him up and throws him against the wall. And then he falls down on the ground and he turns into the prince.
Maybe so. Actually, it's a fairy tale. Yes.
Yes, this is a different version of the fairy tale where the princess feels that the frog has really asked too much. So she feels justified in throwing him against the wall, and it works out in the version that I know. Does anyone know that version where she throws him against the wall? Yes, I'll send you documentation of it. I didn't make it up.
So my expectation is that some feedback, okay, so that in further ahead I can improve this storytelling activities. And it's in COVID-19 lockdown. How can I even incorporate to online? Yes. I used one online tools, Pacaro, while teaching, and then I recorded their voice, converted it into the QR code, and pasted in Facebook page, student Facebook page that I have created. And where in this way I found it's quite interesting.
Okay, anybody, any thoughts, comments, questions? Yes, Sikha.
Sanjeev, I'm so happy that you are here. You found.
Thank you, Sikha. I am because of you.
No, please don't say that. But then I just am happy because you got the right platform. I also began like that. You know, you have to find platforms and you have to share, you have to learn. So I think you are in the right path. I'm so glad to see you. And you told the story wonderfully.
Actually, I want to, if you allow me 2 or 3 minutes, then I want to say, actually, why I like this storytelling. Last year experience, I was, while my seniors were planning for that routine, accidentally grade 9 English period was in the last period. And generally what I found, you know, when the time passes at the school, the students feel tired. Is what there wasn't any choice for me to attract the attention of my students in that bulky books and the content. And then I developed that trick as some you know, storytelling, ice-breaking activities where I can motivate my students towards my content. And I found it. And storytelling is a good way. As I said that I planned paraphrasing and script writing, art and craft. Students draw the palace and draw the characters there and wrote there, and then they acted, and I recorded it. It's quite. I think that we have to teach the language skill rather than the subject, English subject. I think that that's very important. Skill is important.
Sanjeev, can I ask a question, please? Are you telling?
Sure, one.
Are you telling on a laptop or an iPad or what medium?
I'm in my own mobile phone. So
Oh,
do you
your
feel
phone,
any kinds
yes.
of? Do you feel any kinds of problem?
No, it just if you sat it up so that we could see you better. I was a little bit distracted because you were moving your hands all the time, and I think that could have caused the problem with your internet breaking up as well. I really enjoyed your story. I thought it was great, but just I was a wee bit concerned about, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really, Rona, you think the hands movement that takes up so much extra bandwidth that it will affect the internet?
Well, no, if it's just that if he's moving and his microphone is, you know, being like,
I don't know. I think he just has a challenging internet connection.
Yeah, all right. You think it's that? Yes. I thought it was sheer exuberance.
All right.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, so we've had such a wide variety of stories. Give me feedback or send me an email sometime if you think we should make the topic more specific. Because at this point, you know, I'm saying people can just tell any story they like, but to keep in mind that this is storytelling by and for adults. So when we tell a children's story here, we're discussing how we might tell it to children. But let me know if you think I should, a few months ago it was conversations, or last month even, and that prompted a different type of story. Let me know if you want to tell, but the next 2 months are filled.
Sir, if you allow me.
Yes.
Suppose that same story that I am telling to a children is very young, then my sentence structure would be simple. Here I'm telling a little bit younger students, secondary level. So I have chosen some complex sentence, just like while she was playing the ball, bouncing ball in the garden,
yes.
And the ball, the storm blew away the ball and see. So this is a complex sentence. Okay.
Yes.
In this way, we can. Teacher should know about it. What level of the learners he is telling the story. He should select the sentence structures, grammatical, just like.
Yes, yes. But do keep in mind that some of the people here do not work with children. Many of us are trainers. Where we're teaching communication skills and life skills in a human resource department, or we are working with adults in corporations. So there are many different applications of storytelling. Storytelling is not just for children, but it's fine for teachers and parents to tell here and discuss the stories that they are telling to children. That's a perfectly fine thing to do here. The next 2 months are filled with the 10 storytellers apiece. There are slots available on November 2nd. That is the day before the US election. But I think we will be at least I will be such a nervous wreck at that moment. I don't know if I'll be able to sit still. But we have to go on, right? That because the US election is Tuesday, November 3rd. But we'll meet Monday, November 2. Yeah, so if you'd like to tell, just send me an email later.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we say good night
Yes.
and good morning now? Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful meeting.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Natalia.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for coming. Natalia.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Sikha, let's have
Bye bye.
Bye.
Sanjeev ji. Bye bye,
Bye.
Eric,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye. Bye. Good night.
Thank you, Eric. Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. My first
Thank
time.
you.
I loved it.
Okay, please let me know if you'd like to tell in November.
Yes, I'll send you an email.
Yes.
I would love to.
The election special. Okay, bye-bye.
Yay.